All right. It's a little bit after 6 o'clock here on Tuesday, April the 24th, 2018, and we'll call to order tonight's scheduled City Council meeting. I'd ask that we would all rise, and we have, actually, we do not have a member of the Ministerial Alliance with us. I'll ask Ms. Hughes if she would lead us in an invocation, please.
Your Bible days with me. Gracious and loving God, you have entrusted us the task of carrying out the work of this place. By your power, open our minds to your wisdom and our hearts to your love throughout our deliberations, that we may be good stewards of all that you have entrusted into us, and that we may act out wisely for the good of our community. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
Clerk Hunziker, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Hughes.
Yes.
Alderman Curry-Witzman. Alderman Brown.
Here.
Alderman Voss.
Here.
Alderman McComb.
Here.
Alderman Urbis.
Here.
Alderman Bratton.
Here.
Alderman Bastian.
Here.
Alderman Campos.
Here.
And Alderman Pittman.
Here.
Mayor Stevens.
And I'm here as well. I thank everybody for being here. It's good to have everyone in attendance. The members of our city administration who are seated there in front of the presentation, if you want to move, you're welcome to, out to the center of the council chambers so you can eat your popcorn along with the rest of us. And we do have with us tonight a couple of guests from Solar Alliance group. We have Jason Bach, who is their chairman, as well as Mike Clark, who is one of their directors and marketing officer. This is part of the Kerwood development that we as a city have been working on now for a while to try to help facilitate the growth of our town. And so I don't want to, we pretty well all know the background to that and would like to turn it over to either Jason or Mike to introduce themselves. They do have a presentation for us this evening about some of their plans and what they hope to achieve for themselves and for the city. So Jason, I'll turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you all for the invite and the opportunity to be here today. I'll try and move around so I'm talking to everybody at once. We traveled here today because we're really interested in moving forward with developing the site. We see an opportunity that's come together in Illinois because of the state's emerging interest in development of solar power. We can talk a little bit about solar and how the cost has fallen by a factor of 10 over the last 5 years, and how with the economics and the drivers in Illinois, how these are becoming very interesting projects to power as alternatives to traditional fuel sources. So given the state's incentives, in the sense that they're mandating that the utilities buy certain aspects of renewable power, certain credits that renewable power generates, that's creating an economic price for us to sell the power. And we think the Kerwood site is in the right place, in the right jurisdiction, and we have some ideas because of the way that you structured an opportunity for us to utilize the building itself to draw tenants. And I think ultimately what you're interested in is bringing jobs, and we can touch on that. We don't have any hard numbers, I'll say up front, on jobs that it would create, but we do lay out the potential and then the work we need to do for further analysis on that. But perhaps I'll start just with an overview. So I'll talk a little bit about our company, Solar Alliance. We're a public company, so we're traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange and on the over-the-counter exchange in America. I'll outline what we've done as a company. I founded the company. I'm the chairman and CEO and founder, and started this company in Ireland in 2003 before bringing it back to North America and developing a whole bunch of renewable assets, over $1 billion of wind projects and solar projects. We can talk about the Murphysboro project and what we were proposing to council to do, and then the next steps and how we actually get some traction and some rubber on the road and start doing things. Also with me is Mike Clark. Mike is our Chief Operations Officer. He's recently taken over the operations role from his Chief Marketing role. So who is Solar Alliance? Solar Alliance is a company that's focused on residential, commercial, and industrial solar installations. So everything from your typical house, which would be 5 kilowatts on average, to commercial for small businesses and smaller footprints, several hundred kilowatts, and industrial or utility scale applications which can provide power to tens of thousands of homes. We've developed projects over the last 15 years to power over 150,000 homes with renewable power. And that's through a combination of large wind projects in 2 countries and a large number of solar projects in a number of states. Currently have projects under development in Canada, in California, Tennessee, North and South Carolina, and Kentucky. And we have offices in Knoxville, Vancouver, Toronto, and Los Angeles. So a bit of the history of the company, this is probably fairly difficult to make out, but when I created the company, we were called Finavera, which comes from the Irish. Maybe this is a good place to stand. I created the company. It's called Finavera, or in the Irish and the Gaelic, it was Fuenavera, or Energy Ireland. And we started as a diversified renewable energy company about wave energy technology. We developed wind projects in Ireland, and we had some natural gas assets as well. Ultimately, focused on the renewable aspects of the company. We went public. We raised a bunch of money in 2007. We sold a project to NextEra out of Florida, which is one of the largest renewable owners in America, owned by Florida Power and Light. We transacted with really large companies. So GE lent us $7.5 million. We paid GE $10 million back, and they ended up with a $200 million turbine order for a project of ours that we developed in northern British Columbia, which is the province's largest wind project at 185 megawatts. We were awarded, we came out of nowhere in 2010 in British Columbia, and were awarded the smallest company awarded the largest number of largest amount of electricity contracts in the history of the province. So $3 billion of contracted power the province was going to buy from us. So we ended up negotiating with a utility, with a bunch of First Nations, and ultimately ended up building combining 2 large projects into one mega project, which is 185 megawatts, and that project is operational today. It's called the Nickel project. We sold that project to a company called Pattern Energy out of San Francisco for $26 million. And we had another large project in Ireland that we developed that we sold to a utility called Scottish and Southern PLC, also a public company, and 15 billion pound utility that we sold in 2015. And it was at that point, sort of around 2014, back here, I mean, solar power wasn't interesting at all in 2003. Its footprint was minuscule on the planet. But what's happened over the 10 years that took us to get interested in solar was that the cost of power fell exponentially. And that's because of the improvement in manufacturing, the improvement in the cost of manufacturing, the improvement in the technology, and all of a sudden, around 2012, solar started making huge gains in the market. And we thought, well, okay, let's compare the cost of wind energy, which uses tons and tons of steel to build these large masts and these large turbines, to solar. And ultimately, the cost of solar was cheaper than wind. Over the next 15 years, we believe fundamentally that solar is going to be the cheapest source of power on this planet, bar none. It's that easy from what we see happening, and just extrapolating the graphs. So we made the shift out of wind energy and said, look, we're putting it all in with solar because it's so elegant. It's from the sun to the roof to the home. That's it. There's no copper in between. There's no large factory. There's no large central power facilities. It just made economic sense that would get you a cheaper cost of power and with zero fuel cost. So that allowed us to transition. We bought a company out of San Diego called Solar Alliance of America, and we rebranded our whole company from Finavera to Solar Alliance in 2015. We bought a few other companies. We bought a company in Tennessee that has a great track record in the state and the surrounding areas. Then also another large company in Los Angeles that we sort of used to learn and develop our residential opportunities. So we have, through the acquisitions that we've made, over 13,000 residential customers between San Diego and Los Angeles, and then a number of larger projects in the Tennessee area that I'll talk about as a tracker. And ultimately what I'm trying to show is that we've been doing this for a long time. If you're in renewable energy for over 5 years, you're considered an expert. We've been doing this for 15 years, and we've transacted with some of the biggest and the best, which took us to where we are today. Thanks. A bit about myself. I founded the company. I'm a physicist by trade, and ultimately figured out how to become a entrepreneur raising money for good ideas. Mike, who is here, perhaps a bit about yourself, Mike.
Yeah, my background before I joined Solar Alliance about 13 years or so ago, I was a journalist, so I worked as a reporter. Joined this company when it was doing wind energy development, and then did a brief stint with a mining company for about 3 years before Solar Alliance sort of came to be, and they moved out of wind and into solar, and so I've been back with the company for about 2 or 3 years now. Really just sort of manage all of the marketing stuff up until about a week ago, where I took on the role of chief operating officer as well. So.
Ken Stadlin is based in Washington, D.C. Ken is on the board of SEIA, which is our industry body, the Solar Energy Industrial Association. And Dave Lamont is a Northern Irish gentleman who happens to be our venture capitalist on the board. Technically, we have Harvey Abutlada in Tennessee. Harvey has run the company that we acquired for a number of years and generated about 5 megawatts of projects and electricity in that area. He's head of our commercial division. But also, you may see, if you make out the text, William Shatner. So Captain Kirk is our spokesperson. He joined our company last year, and he's got a strong view of helping to, accelerate change. And it's kind of interesting what he did with Priceline. He took Priceline from a $300 million company to a $90 billion company, and that's the way that we're starting to look at utilizing Mr. Shatner so that we can reach residential customers through his amazing marketing techniques. So he owns stock in the company. These are some of the examples of projects. This text is probably too small for you to make out, but this is a large project with the Appalachian Energy Collective that we developed, which was roughly 1.4 kilowatts, or 1.4 megawatts, 1370 kilowatts. So this is an example of a large solar project, and we'll make sure that you have the digital copies of all this that we developed successfully for an electrical utility. Looking through these, and these are really difficult to see on the screen, unfortunately, and I apologize for that. This is Wampler's Farm Sausage in Tennessee, and why we like this as a case study, because this was a small business that came to us and said, look, we're paying a lot for electricity. Can you help us do something smarter? So we engaged them in a program, and we analyzed all of their electricity use, and they invested a couple $100,000 that paid itself back in 3 years. Then they took that money and they reinvested it in something else that paid itself back in 2 years. So we've had a long relationship with them over 8 years, and they've probably saved now a few $1 million in electricity costs over that period. And it's a fantastic model if you dive into it, because they invest, they get their money back. They invest, they get their money back, and all the savings that go along with that for 20 years. So this is a perfect small business case study that we often show small businesses on how we can help optimize their electricity costs. This is the largest project that we've developed in Tumbler Ridge in British Columbia, Canada, an old coal mining town. They literally just moved the mountain, and when that changed and the town went through its depressed era, they decided to look at alternatives. And we came in, this was the windiest area in the area that had the best grid connectivity, and was one of the addresses that we wanted to develop for a project. So we started developing this in 2005. Ultimately, it was constructed in 2014, 2015, and is 185 megawatts, enough to provide a $400 million project and to provide about 40,000 homes with electricity. So it's quite a motion that we're pretty proud of. And then this is a list of other projects that we currently have in development that are public, or projects that we have constructed over the last 6 years or so. All with the number of visits. This is our customer base between San Diego and Los Angeles. People have been happy with their solar projects. On the average home provides, or we provide about a 5 kilowatt system. That system costs $20,000 to $25,000 and pays itself back in 5 years. And then after that, you have 15 years of free electricity. So in the California market, with the very high electricity costs and the federal tax incentives, that's a very economic proposition. That's why the industry has exploded in California. And you see more than half of all of the installed solar in the country in California. But now in Illinois, now in other states, you're starting to see more and more states become what are called solar states or reach grid parity. You can see here on this graph On this line, which is in blue, shows the fall in the cost of solar from 2008 to 2016, and then the resultant rise in the number of installations, or the installations. So it's kind of obvious, as cost falls, installation rises. The number of states that have become economic has increased over the last 5 years. So in 2014, it was 12 states where you'd want to develop solar. By 2018, it's estimated that 31 states are going to be economic for solar. So that keeps changing as power costs rise and the cost of solar falls. Why do we like solar power, and why do we think that this can be a benefit to Murphysboro? It can change and be a vehicle for change for the community. So part of what we want to do under this program, Renewing the Murphysboro Community through Green Energy Jobs, is educate people about solar and about storage of power from solar. The really interesting iteration that California is going through now is not only solar power, but a home battery. So you may have heard the Tesla battery and whatnot. So we're working with the Powerwall. LG has a battery, Mercedes has a battery, and there's a number of home batteries where you can have backup power for your home. So if your power goes out for a couple of days, you literally have enough storage to power your home on limited circuits. You don't want to turn everything on, but you'll have your fridge backed up, you'll be able to open your garage and all of these other essential features. And ultimately, in California, because of the rate structure, which is called time of use, so your usage varies, your cost varies throughout the day with your usage, you'll be able to rely off your solar generated power at noon and use that at dinner time, or the power from the previous day at breakfast time. And that will save you a whole bunch of money and will allow you to play the curve for electricity generation and the cost with the utility, or gain the curve. So we're proposing a community solar generation and battery storage project on the Kerwood property. We have a number of phases for this. We're planning to attract tenants as well. And we want to engage as many people as possible and show them what we know. Jobs in the space are growing dramatically. There's more people employed in solar than there are in Google. So it's a material industry. And it's continuing to grow at very attractive rates. So as with any aggressively growing technology or subsector or sector, you're looking for more workforce, more people. And because of the steps that Illinois has taken over the last year, this is a very attractive space in the state. And we predict that not just utility scale and residential, but you're going to start seeing much more residential interest in solar in Illinois. As you know, in the south, it has cheaper power than in the north, so we think that'll probably start in the north part of the state, but it will trickle down and it will come down. So power is cheap now. The spot power price here is very cheap historically. That doesn't stay the same forever, and it does vary over time. So I think that coupled with the falling cost of solar is going to make residential solar economic and backup residential solar economic as well. So we think we can tell people what we know. And part of what we do is arbitrage. In the sense, I was living in Ireland when I started this company, and then I came back to North America and I said, well, look at what I learned over here. Let's do this here. We were the first wind developer in British Columbia. We went to California and learned a whole bunch about solar, and now we're taking it to the southeast and to Illinois. So, I mean, this is not rocket science in the sense that it's new or cutting-edge technology. We don't want to be cutting-edge technology. We like off-the-shelf stuff that's proven and that works. And what we can do is share that knowledge. And I think through this type of community involvement in education, we can show people what we know. They can go off and do it themselves. They can be a part of our alliance, and we literally mean that. We want people to join the club and be, drink our Kool-Aid and be part of the change. So we certainly want to have people behind and involved in company in many capacities. So by providing clean solar power, resilient battery backup, we do plan to have a bunch of batteries on site, and this would be one of the largest and foremost utility scale backup projects in the country. There's a bunch that are planned in California because of brownouts where they have a need to have that backup power. But what we could provide here, because of the potential tenant that we'll talk about, is a battery system outside of California. That could be one of the first ones, and certainly one of the more economically attractive installations in the country.
So maybe I'll just jump in there. Sure. The next slide up is just about what we're sort of looking at for the property, but it's interesting. You're probably wondering, Jason and I are both from Vancouver. It's a long ways away. Wondering how we actually ended up here with this project. And it was our former CFO, actually, who's from this region, got a phone call from the mayor, because we had put it out there that we wanted to develop something in this area, part of a workforce redevelopment program involving solar. And Mayor Stevens called up our CFO and said, hey, why don't you take a look at our community? And that's what got us interested here. It's interesting how things like this come together, right? It's sort of a phone call out of the blue. So what we're looking at is, as Jason mentioned, a couple different phases. Now, understand that this is all in the proposal stage right now, and you probably have people come before you with various development plans and things like that. And what we're committing to today is we're going to do everything we can to make this happen. We're pretty. We have a strong belief in solar and the ability of solar in terms of community development. But also this site is kind of interesting too, and there's some strong potential there. You can't see it very well, but well, you don't need to see too much of it really, other than to say that this is the Kerwood building of the site, and really what you've got there is an array of solar panels in and around there. It's about 1 to 2 megawatts of solar essentially is what we're proposing. We've done the site design already. We've done a pretty detailed site design, and we have come up with some information that we use internally to sort of model how much electricity we're going to produce, what it's going to cost, what type of off-takers we need for that power, what kind of a tenant we'd want to have in there. Ultimately, someone who uses a lot of electricity, obviously, to make it viable. So we've done that sort of analysis. We've been on site several times. The city has done a structural assessment of it as well that we've analyzed. We're just on site today as well, actually setting off the alarm. Met the town police chief.
Yeah.
So as you know, the building, different parts of it require different amounts of work, right? And so, what we're looking at doing is figuring out a way to scale the development of the site in combination with the development of the solar. So not redeveloping the whole site, rebuilding everything all at once, but figuring out if there's a way to do this in a staged process. So use a piece of the property and get a tenant in there, build some solar, establish sort of a base of operations essentially, and then build it out as we make sure that it's feasible. And one of the, you guys have probably heard a lot about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin mining and things like that. Or maybe not, but if you haven't, Jason will dig into it a little bit. But basically, we're looking for a tenant or tenants that have high power consumption, right? But also sort of low touch. So there's not a lot of either manufacturing on site or something like that, because we want to get it up and running quickly so we can prove it out, so we can do something and develop some solar on this site. And cryptocurrency is one of those areas that has a lot of potential. And Jason's been spending a lot of time on it. I'll let you go with it because I know you love it.
Yeah. So this industry is really interesting, and as Mike said, these groups require a lot of power. So basically, they say they're mining bitcoins or creating currency. Essentially, what they're doing is renting their computer and getting paid for it. That's what Bitcoin mining is. So they have a whole bunch. It's a data farm. It's a data farm not too dissimilar from what Amazon would have, or Google would have, or others. They have a whole bunch of servers that are doing complex operations and they're getting paid for it, or they're leasing out their space, doing cloud computing, etc. But this group in particular has a modular system. They're containerized, so these servers can be moved all around the country depending on where the cheapest cost of power is. And what they're doing is taking the machines that they've ordered, putting them into these containers. They have 13 containers available today sitting in Utah and Washington that they're looking for a home for. So we've been working with Amerin to see if is this feasible, how much power we can get them, because they can utilize all of it, not just what we generate from solar. And I think I want to stress too, solar is a standalone opportunity. Solar is economic regardless of this. This is an additional value add that we think we can bring with a tenant that will generate jobs, use power, and grow, and help us generate revenue so that we can refurbish the building and utilize that floor space. And it's possible that the Kerwood building could be used for multiple types of tenants. This could be one. In fact, this group could occupy a very small space initially, and then you have the whole rest of the facility that you could bring others into. So it's a massive building with a lot of potential, but you need to spend the first probably $500,000 easily redoing the roof, getting that building in a suitable state to attract more tenants. So I think this is probably the fastest and quickest way. And you may have heard that there are lots of groups right now combing North America for cheap power, and Southern Illinois has them. In fact, we're trying to figure out how much power we can get them. So we've discussed with the mayor the potential of getting not just a couple of megawatts to them, which is available now, 30 megawatts. But that's going to take time, and the mayor tells us 2 years. We're saying, well, that's too long. So anyways, but that's part of the interesting development opportunity. It's a group that has a whole bunch of data servers that could use a lot of power that they want to be housed in a facility that provides them cheap power. So that could be an interesting bit that starts us generating a whole bunch of revenue totally separate from the solar power. Every megawatt of solar power they would use that we could build. They could use much, much more than we can build. So we'd like to use that additional power from the mayor as well.
And there's a lot of groups out there that want that sort of green branding as well, right? Which is a benefit. So one of the primary groups that we're talking to, they want to have a solar-powered cryptocurrency mining operation, right? So they're not necessarily interested in just cheap power, but they're not going to pay exorbitant amounts for power. But a combination really makes a lot of sense for some of these companies. So it's something we're pursuing pretty aggressively, and I think we're going to have hopefully some good news in not too distant future.
This would be the first solar-powered mining facility on the planet. Right now, this industry uses more power than all of Argentina, and it came out of nowhere. A year ago, this industry was almost non-existent, but because of the meteoric rise in the Bitcoin price and the variability and the interest and the alternatives around it, people are starting to buy more and more of these machines, which are using more and more power. An analogous industry in California is actually the cannabis industry. Came out of nowhere with rule changes, and now they need a huge amount of power. So the state has come down and said, look, you guys can't have an infinite supply of power without taking responsibility for the pollution that you're going to cause. So under the legislation in California, they now need 42% renewable power. And everybody's scrambling in that industry trying to find renewable power. I have no doubt that this industry is going to be the same. It's going to come under federal regulation, and it's going to come under state regulation for renewable power generation. Just like every other industry, they're going to have to be responsible for what they use and what they pollute. So it's interesting that this could be the first solar mining facility and a model for others across the country.
Yeah, we think once and if we sort of announce this to the world, that people will be knocking on our door to be able to come in and house their operations there. Because it is such a large space, there'd be the availability or space availability for several different groups to come in, essentially set up this sort of plug and play idea where you've got a solar farm that's going to produce part of the power, access to other power, and access to facilities and infrastructure in the town. It could be a great fit, right? So beyond this as well, we've sort of scoped out another area that we've been talking about, which is down at the wastewater treatment plant. There's a large plot of land that we're interested in discussing. Again, this is phase 2, so this is about ideas, about potential, whether or not this would work or go forward. We've done the detailed analysis of it in terms of what we could do, and it's very similar to what we would do on site at the Kerwood building, right? I mean, we're just there today as well, actually. I mean, it's a great piece of land. It's relatively flat above that floodplain area. I mean, so building solar there would be relatively straightforward. It's about finding, again, the off-takers and the people that want to use that electricity, and that's really where all of our efforts are right now. Just a bit more information on Captain Kirk. We just like to put his picture up there because why not?
Well, right.
So some of the next steps, we're aggressively pursuing tenants and agreements. So what we need to do to really kick this all off is to have that one first tenant say that they're willing to pay us for the electricity, willing to pay us to come in here and set up shop. And as soon as we get that, we'll really push forward on everything else, which is, making sure everyone understands all the permitting requirements. And then...
I'm in the meeting, John, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I've got a mother that's in a nursing home now,
Yeah, no
7
worries.
years old, so I don't turn mine off.
Yeah, that's all good. Then we would come up with the final design, and then we finalize a training and certification program. So, what we've been talking about all along with this project from the outset is, the idea of transitioning people that are in different sectors out of those sectors into the solar sector, because we think that there's huge potential there long term, and oftentimes it just takes, a project like this that says we're going to do that we're going to have a workforce redevelopment program attached to it, a training program attached to it, to show people that there are opportunities in the solar space. And I think in Illinois, for sure, there are going to be long-term. It's becoming much more interesting here now, for sure. And so what we'll do is we'll set up an actual training program. We'll probably, if this all goes forward, have some type of a workshop space on site where people can come, sort of a community office, and then we'll have a recruitment process, obviously working with the city and local agencies in terms of advertising it and figuring out who's eligible and really opening the doors, because this is a project that takes a lot. There's a lot of moving pieces in this project, for sure. You can probably see that, we develop a lot of projects where we just go and talk to one person and say, hey, do you want to buy solar? And they say yes. We're like, okay, great. This one has a few more, right? And so it takes a real partnership, I think, between the developer, us, community, the utility, and so we want to figure out a way that there's a win-win-win for everyone. And really, what we found in the past is these types of training programs really sort of are a home run, right? Because there's something tangible there at the end of the day. Because Jason had mentioned in terms of jobs, it's really hard to say what the jobs will be depending on the scale of the project, but there's definitely a few dozen jobs in sort of development stage of it. When it's up and operating, like a solar farm, a solar project, depending on who the tenant is, doesn't have that many, permanent long-term jobs. But as the industry grows, solar installers, engineers, obviously project developers, project managers, those type of jobs will be plentiful throughout the region. So I want to make sure that people and community members, if they're interested, have the ability and the skills to sort of take advantage of what we think is going to be an amazing industry in this area for a long time. Anything you'd like to wrap up with?
I think the other piece to add is that from this project, it can spur solar development in other parts of the community as well. As we generally see, it starts with a big idea. It starts with the community, the councils. Then ultimately, it's the small businesses, it's the foundations, and then it's the residences. And that's in every jurisdiction. It starts in that top trickle down. So this could be the piece that pushes solar to the small businesses next. And people that are trained on this project can install it on the aluminum factory or on the aluminum rolling
Pin.
facility. Yes, and some of the other buildings. I mean, we've looked at a bunch of the roofs of the churches coming into town, and that's a fantastic roof. It could have solar on it. It could save a whole bunch of money, and it would save money in today's climate. So those would be the next opportunities that people who are trained on this project can go work on, either with us or with different groups, or be employed by whoever. But they could have that national certification that gives them that next step into an interesting industry. And we have people in Tennessee that travel to California all the time. It's possible, and live in Knoxville, not in the Nashville, but in Knoxville. So the small town in Tennessee, and they're working across the country. They're flying to Vancouver as well. So there's an opportunity to get the skills here and deploy that across the country, not necessarily just in Southern Illinois. So it is a very mobile workforce, and it's in demand. So that could be a fantastic push for individuals in the region. I'm very happy to take any questions on any aspect of what we've talked about or other things that we haven't talked about, and be as open as possible. Being a public company, we are very open. We publish everything we do. We're about transparency. So I mean, there's nothing really that you can ask me that I can't talk about, except some confidential things with business partners that I am precluded. But other than that, I can be very open and transparent.
What do you see when you move into an area? What's the effect of the electric rates like we have Ameren here? What do they normally do? Stay about the same, go up, go down?
We're a mosquito on an elephant.
Pardon?
We're a mosquito on an elephant in terms of the impact that our generation would have on the bulk of generation from the utility. They're much, much larger.
Oh.
So, I mean, we have no effect on the overall spot market price. A lot of the installations are behind the meter. I think in California now it's getting to the level of penetration. People are saying, well, what's happening to the utility? Do they need to build that power plant or not? And that's becoming, and you're seeing in California utilities pushing back, saying, well, I want to build a power plant, a traditional power plant, like we built in the 1800s, instead of having distributed solar. And at that level of penetration, things get interesting. But right now, I mean, there's virtually no solar installed in all of Illinois, so it would not be able to move rates. We'd like to get it to the point where it can move the rates, but we're not there yet.
I mean, I've had a zillion questions for him, so if the council or anybody else has questions, now's the time to to ask. I think the other primary thing is that, just speaking with Jason before the meeting, is that they have commissioned a Phase 1 independent environmental study of their own, which should be back within another 7 or 8 days, approximately 10 days. And I believe that's going to satisfy their legal counsel's concerns about the property. And then at that time, they have reviewed the documents that our legal counsel drew up and would be willing to execute those in terms of the transfer of the property once that Phase 1 is complete. Is that a correct statement, Jason?
Correct. I think our council will have a different purchase and sale agreement, but it's, you know, it's friendly. There shouldn't be anything surprising, and it should be fairly straightforward. So
Okay.
we're ready to go as soon as that is received.
All right, so again, I thank you for coming here a multitude of times over the last few months, and I'm excited and confident that we can make this happen for the betterment of Murphysboro and the betterment of Solar Alliance.
Fantastic. It's certainly been fantastic working with you, and thanks a lot for facilitating everything. And I think that's what it takes at this stage too. It takes, you know, a group like yourself to take that risk and say, okay, is this going to happen? Is it not? But you know, we've been through this a few times before, I would guess. I think we're, you know, different in the right place at the right time, and I think that helps from our track record and from the fact we don't take on a lot of this. We generally don't do smaller projects like this, but we see the opportunity to scale it, and we see the state as being in the right place at the right time. So it's kind of us seeing a mutual opportunity, and we want to move forward as fast as we can.
Mr. Clark, do you have anything?
No.
Okay. All right, well, if there's no other questions from the council, I know you've got a flight to catch in the morning, so I would thank you again for being here. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have our contact details, our email address. The presentation will be available digitally as well. So if there's any follow-up questions or for anybody, feel free to shoot us an email or phone.
yeah, and if you want to just email the presentation to me, Jason, I can then just forward it to all the rest of the city council members from there.
We'll do that tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
I apologize for having to run out.
No
I
problem.
understand.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
Safe travels.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
See ya.
All right. Brian, I guess this will just time out on its own. I mean, it's, Richard, is this bothering you at all?
No, it doesn't, no.
Oh, okay. All right, I just want to make sure it wasn't shining in your eyes.
No, I can't tell.
Don't have eyes back there.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, you look very angelic. So, okay, well, I feel like we've been through a lot already, but we haven't even approved the minutes yet. So we'll move into our regular items here, and the first up is consideration of council minutes from April the 10th, 2018. Any questions on the minutes?
I just had one.
Mr. Urvis.
On page 4, the last big paragraph, I guess, talking about the no parking sign. The third from the bottom said Alderman Urvis and Bratton made a motion. I guess I made the motion, I don't know if Danny seconded it, but
Oh,
it wasn't a
okay.
joint motion.
But
No,
a
it was
joint
not.
motion. Okay,
Did you
okay.
second it?
I'll second it.
Okay. I was thinking Gloria did, but
Okay.
either way.
Or Gloria can, doesn't matter.
I'd say Bratton, we're going to make it 45
Yeah.
minutes. Okay.
That's the longest pause between a motion and a second in the history of the city.
That's right. That's all I have.
Okay.
One and that motion
Yeah.
Any other questions on the minutes? I'd entertain a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And next we have consideration of accounts payable registers. I believe we just have one register, 662. Entertain any questions on those bills? Mr. Bratton?
On page one, the very first one, is that the subdivision out there off the Ava Blacktop?
It is. It finally came in. It took forever, but weather conditions and whatnot. And boy, am I glad it's over.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
How
wait,
many
I think-
houses are actually on that
I
line?
think 4.
4? That, are they all gonna hook in then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I admit it's gonna take a long time to pay that back, but, I mean, between Kincaid and us, I felt like they were getting a raw deal, but anyway, I'm glad it's over.
Yeah.
That isn't completed yet, is it?
I believe it is.
And when I come by there this morning, there was still a hole open, the dirt and stuff on the
Well,
east side of the blacktop. I didn't know if that,
if you want, we can hold the check if the project's not complete. I don't got any problem with that.
you know, I could,
Last time I talked to Bill Todd, he mentioned they hadn't made a bore underneath the highway yet.
Oh.
That's what I saw him Monday.
I think they've dug up on both sides, but I don't think they got the line done yet.
I definitely think we need to hold back money then.
All right, well, let's hold it until we get the project completed. Other questions on the bills? Mr. Voss, did you have something?
No.
Okay. Mr. Urbis?
Well, I had this question, I got it answered, but just for the council on top of page 7, the bill for Mark Brittingham. We approved a payment of $10,000 a couple meetings ago. This isn't another $10,000. He didn't get the check, so.
We did stop, Leslie did stop payment by that, by
So
the way.
this is just the same amount we previously
Yeah,
authorized.
it's not that
paying.
he's billing us another
Right,
10,000.
exactly, exactly.
Gloria?
Yes, it's on page 8. We have 2 bills for our legal team I know that they had a lot of work.
One was March and one was April though.
322 to 425 and 410 to 425.
Yeah, it's 2 billing cycles.
Leslie told me today that the first one was for March and the second one really was for April.
Okay, okay. And the very last one is on page 10 that I have. It's Usemco for 330. We bought a compressor for $3,000.
That's page 10.
That's that's the main unit for our lift station at the river. Our other one's in bad shape, so we're in the process of changing that out.
Mr. Bratton?
On page 6, $662.17 for latex gloves.
That's
What kind
more
of
than one
gloves
pair,
are
I
these?
hope.
Wastewater treatment. It was part of it.
No,
No,
that-
it's just James McNally that does that.
That probably is enough for the year or something. He always buys in bulk to save us money. He does a good job with that.
Well, 5104 is for Jim, we know that.
Do what?
5104, that account is for Jim, we know that. So $463 of them are going to wastewater. 5103, what's that, Sandra? Just regular water. And then streets, yeah.
So this is enough
it's all
latex
public
gloves for
works.
everybody for a year, I
For
guess?
Public Works.
Well, I question the end of the day on that. I don't, that's a lot of gloves. We use the bulk of them, but that's a lot of money for gloves, but I don't have any control over that, so I guess he does.
Well,
I know our guys use them for.
pardon now?
Our guys use them for like picking up the trash and different things.
Yeah, but that
and-
first item, that $463, that's for the wastewater treatment plant, if I understand correctly.
Yes.
And I think that, Jim, you definitely ought to have some input on it.
That's a lot of gloves.
Yeah, as chairman of Public Works, I think that, I think that you should have some input on that, my opinion.
Well, I mean, the only thing I can say about it is, I mean, I don't think they go bad.
Yeah,
I mean-
I think he bought a bunch of them because he saved I think he told me something about he ordered a large amount of them, and I think he said he saved maybe $88 or $188. I'm not sure. I think he ordered a large amount of them, so he saved X amount of dollars.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what he bought or anything else. I'm just saying that sent a red flag up to me.
It would be nice to know, I think, Danny, how long he thinks those would last us. It could be used, for that matter.
Did you get a great big box, I hope, Jim?
You get small boxes.
There was a stack of boxes about yay high. I mean, there was like
He's
three.
getting cases.
And he was getting cases of them, so there was, three.
I don't know.
I understand why you're using them, Jim, but why are we using them to pick up trash when we have work gloves?
They're thick ones, and I
Huh?
don't know. They're thick ones, and I'm not sure. I know that they use them. I know the water department uses them, and the street department uses them.
They ought to be
I don't
able-
know exactly what they use them for, but maybe.
Well, they ought to be inventoried out to them, and they have to turn a pair back in and get another pair, so if they're wore out. That's how most construction companies do it.
They're thick latex.
If you lose them, you're out. If you turn the pair back in when they're wore out, you get another pair.
You're talking about work
They're-
gloves,
they-
not latex.
No, I'm
gloves.
talking about rubber gloves and stuff.
Yes,
Really?
I mean, really.
If they
those-
assign you a pair of gloves to use,
It's not
Uh,
ones that you repeatedly use, the rubber gloves that you dispose
they're
of.
just a little thin one.
Disposable latex.
Yeah, we're not talking about like the yellow ones that my aunt used to wash dishes with.
I'm talking about like surgical gloves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more of that kind
I
of
have workers and I go through cases
Mhm.
of gloves. And I don't have a department. I have a few workers, and believe me,
Well, I guess my question really comes down to, do we want to hold Mr. McAnally's reimbursement check and inquire about his purchasing? I don't particularly, just because I trust Jim. But we can if we want to.
I'm not saying that we should hold the check, but I think we need to find out and how many, and if the gloves are for the wastewater treatment plant, then all the gloves ought to be delivered out there or to where Jim can pick them up and have them there. And there's certain applications, I agree with what Gary Alderman McComb's saying, there's certain applications, if you're in a ditch and doing sanitary, you may get them off and they wind up in a ditch, you need another pair, and that's it, But I understand where he's coming from
Right.
too. That's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions on the bills?
Make a motion to pay the bill.
All right, so that motion, I presume, is with the exception of the A&W plumbing.
Yes.
Okay.
We already said not to pay it.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to our regular committee and commission reports. Budget and Finance, chaired by Mr. W.J. Pittman. W.J.?
Thank you, Mayor. Under old business, we have the Senior Citizen Center repair contract. I guess you and Alderman McComb were gonna get together with, Mr. Balsino.
And we were able to do that today. I threatened to throw myself off the
You leave yourself out.
council last time, so I thought I'd better get to it. Met with Joe today, myself and Alderman McComb, and essentially, I am going to, we talked it over. The seniors, of course, they pay for their water bill and their electric bill, and now they pay for the gas on the van and the maintenance on the van and the insurance on the van. They've been paying the insurance on the building itself, on the inside. And so one of the things that we talked about, myself and Alderman McComb with Joe, is that it might make sense, I think it makes sense, for the city to have Osborne look at what it would cost for us to pick up the tab on their insurance costs on the inside, because we already have, quite a large account there. And honestly, after talking with Joe, I feel like, I pulled the numbers on it, and since 2013, they are about $5,000 under budget. We were allocating $8,000 a year. They were spending about half of that. We cut them back and cut them back and cut them back. And so it's sort of my idea that you know, the contents of the building, if they dissolve tomorrow, are gonna be the city's. And the building, when the city owns the building. So we should essentially just chart out those things that they're already paying for on paper, water, electric, the insurance, and those types of things. They'll pay for those. Maintenance on the items in the building will be our responsibility, but will continue to be reviewed by the council as they arise. And I really think that's the best way to approach it, because, you know, they're making the bus thing profitable again. They've raised their rates on that a little bit, and so that's, I think, doing all right for them. And I think I'm confident they're going in the right direction. So I think I have said that about as succinctly as I could about how the meeting went today. Questions? Barb? Sorry, Gary.
No, that's fine.
When you say that you wanted to check about insurance with Bert, or with Osborne's, I mean, were you indicating that two things? One, that you think you can get it cheaper than what they're paying it because
Yes.
of the multiple policies that we have?
Well, I don't know that, but that's sort of my theory.
That's why I was wondering if that
Yeah.
was the theory behind that. And two, were you then going to recommend that the city pay that also, or that they pay us that?
I was recommending the city pay that because I think it could allow them to get this debt that they've got for the new van paid down.
Okay, I
And-
just wanted some kind of,
And really, when I look at it, when I really honestly, and this is just my perspective, and anybody can disagree with me, welcome to, and that's that they do serve a lot of people down there, and they have operated, I think, responsibly with the budget that we've given them over the years. And I think that we maybe have touched them a little bit more than we necessarily had to. And if we can get that cheaper and help them retire that debt on that van, it'll just help them build up their own coffers.
yeah.
To the extent to where maybe at that time we could look again at you know, scaling back a little bit more, something if we wanted to. But I mean, shoot, I think right now our total allocation there is $3,000 a year out of a $5 million budget. I mean, we spend that more than that on latex gloves. So that's you know, Gary.
Well, and one thing they have done, they put new carpet in the building on herself. They put new wood floors in a couple or three of the offices up there that they have, and, you know, they've had the floor re-waxed and buffed. And the other day when the roofers was taking the roof off, somebody put in the kitchen, I don't know, one of the overheads or something was attached to the roof. Well, it come down, messed up some stuff. No way the roofers knew, only people who knew it was put in like that was whoever installed the
roof,
the vent, or whatever it was, but it come down, just like nobody was under it. But they have spent a lot of money out of their pocket. They don't have a lot of money. Their biggest fundraiser all year is Apple Festival, you know. And they have a band on Thursday nights, the last Thursday of the month. And I serve on the council up there, but they have a club too. And they take pretty well all the money out of that. You know, there's a little going back and forth there. Be like the street department and the water department. One getting a new backhoe and the other one got a junk one. They're ex-cane about it, you know, but they're putting their best foot forward. I will say that for them. They serve meals up there every day that's brought in from Carbondale, and if somebody can't afford to pay for a $3 a meal, they just say, enjoy your food. So,
Mr. Bratton.
Just for clarification, it's my understanding that, like Alderman McComb said, nobody knew that something was attached to that roof. But Clover Roofing is going to put the ceiling back in at their expense. They're also going to go in and strip and clean the floor in that area, not the whole place, but
Well, they do
so
a
I think
good
that
job.
they've,
yeah,
and that's another advantage to using somebody that we had before that's a local contractor.
Absolutely.
If we would have went with the other contractor in Lebanon or wherever they were from. I doubt seriously if we,
Yeah.
I think that they went beyond their actual duty,
Yeah.
because it was an unforeseen thing.
WJ?
I think I'm good with at least getting a quote on our insurance and seeing what that cost would be. But I don't want to lose sight of, I think what this item was originally added on was that there was a repair done
To the freezer.
to the freezer that we didn't know anything about until that was back, and then we're on the hook for paying for it after it's been done.
Right.
So I don't want to lose sight that we may still need some sort of, either, whether it's a contract, or even a verbal, I mean, I think we
It
should
could
be
be
involved
a-
in that
just a
process.
policy.
Yeah.
To make sure that they use anybody that we have a maintenance contract with, or, something like that. That, I know there's some cases like that was probably an emergency, but, I think there should still be a process that we should be involved in if there's gonna be, whether it's maintenance over a certain dollar amount or something like that, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point, WJ,
I
really.
agree.
And I thought that, I myself thought that that was what you were going to be working toward as
Well,
best
and-
they can.
And the conversation today was about outlining what they're already paying for. And I've got that written out at the office, and sort of what the city has always been paying for, and then memorializing that. So I did accomplish that
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
But I think you touch on a good point, WJ, and that's that, should we make as a part of that, and forgive me because this maybe was part of the conversation from the very beginning and I just missed it, but should we make as a part of that some sort of ceiling that we, authorize Joe or whoever at the senior hall to be able to spend in a situation where there's an emergency like this freezer?
Right.
And I don't know what number that would be, if it's $1,500 or $1,000 or what. But,
Well, I think that if we just had an outline, what they were responsible for, what we were responsible for, and things we were responsible for, who they should call.
Yeah.
I think that, I think that, I know the council would, and I think they would welcome that. It's just a clarification, so there's no misunderstandings. And
Russell, I just think, or not, excuse me, not Russell, Gary, you're the chairman of Building and Grounds, so we could make either myself or you the contact person in that kind of.
Well, and that's like now, when that stuff fell in the other day, they have a metal door where the people get their food. You raise it and it rolls in the
Fire
road.
door.
That damaged that. That's gonna have to be fixed because the door will not stay up now.
Mhm.
And getting somebody to fix it, me and Joe was talking about it after it happened, and I said, Joe, it may be a garage person
It is,
That
that's
could-
exactly that
could fix that,
Mhm.
because that's just pretty well a lot of people's garages
That's who
do.
usually installs them in restaurants. I know that in the schools, that's who installs them.
Maybe bring you out of retirement to do the job.
Like I said, garage door people, not me. I'm not cranking on that thing, but I gotta put that bar in there, but there's someone local that I can give you the number and name, Gary, if you wanna contact them.
But what happened too up there, Joe, when he called Crane the last time, he didn't know we had switched, or he said he didn't know we had switched the whole contract
Right, to Voss.
over to Voss. That
Where
he,
if we had
Whereas
somebody
if
in
we
the
had it
city
written-
that they were supposed to go through, that person would
Yeah.
know.
And a list, and who
There
to
was
call
a
with the
list
repair.
and who to call, and that we would.
Well, I'll incorporate that into this document that I'll bring back to the next meeting. It won't be, I think, overly complex, but,
I think
and-
we have a meeting tomorrow there at 12 or 12:30.
okay.
I
All right.
don't want it to look like we are constantly trying to take things
Oh,
away
no,
from
I don't
anything
either.
else.
I mean, they service a lot of
And I don't want them to have that
people.
impression, that-
Sure,
So I think looking at the quote for the insurance is a good idea.
yeah. Okay.
All right. There's no more questions on that. That's the only item under old business. Under new business, we have a presentation of financial reports by Scott Evans, the budget officer. Mr. Evans?
Okay, so, the same group of reports this month. I'm gonna start with the sales tax report. So, as you can see, in April, we have been vouchered between the home rule and sales tax, $239,871, which is keeping up with the trend so far this year of being ahead of not only last year, but no, it's probably the highest we've seen in any April in the last 7 years. And this is with the 2% admin fee already deducted out of this. So, you know, it'd be about $2,500 per month more if we get to keep that money. But so I'm not quite sure what the cause of that is. I don't think we have any new businesses that I'm not aware of. It looks like the businesses that we have are getting more sales.
It's a good thing.
So anyway, so that tends to be running north of what we expected, so that's a good thing.
I know there was a considerable amount of money spent on the rehabilitation of the boot camp. I don't know how much of that was spent locally, but.
There wouldn't be any sales
There
tax
wouldn't
on
be sales
that.
tax on that.
Well, that's right, because it will all be.
And it'd be too soon to see any effect of
Employees.
a new workforce
Right.
coming into town from that, I would think. So I'm not quite sure what that is.
Rubber gloves.
I feel like that's gonna turn into something.
But we just lost the sales tax revenue with the used car lot just east of town, across the river.
Wag Auto.
They've moved out.
Let
me chime in on that real quick. You didn't lose anything. What happened with WAG is it came to my attention that WAG was not exactly operating legally. And I coordinated with Secretary of State Police, and what WAG was doing was completely evading state and local taxes. So we were getting nothing from WAG other than drug dealers running cars and having shootings.
Mhm.
And so WAG decided rather than follow Illinois law, they just decided to pack up and move. Because the Department of Revenue and Secretary of State Police said you're going to follow the law. We were getting no sales tax revenue from WAG. They were totally evading. So you can blame me for shutting them down, but the fact is they were operating illegally and they decided this was not a place to be.
Thank you very much.
So they're moving drugs through them too. I figured that's what.
Yeah.
But they are gone. They have left Illinois and gone back to Kentucky and Missouri.
Well, and honestly, we don't receive a tremendous amount of percentage on auto sales anyway. The home rule tax is not applicable to it. It's just the 6 1/4%. And so we only get our regular share of that anyway. And so, yeah, I don't think we're going to lose much there, it sounds like. So, but whatever the reason is, it's up, hey, we'll take it. Okay, on the back page, the income tax receipt. And for this month, our voucher amount was $67,000, so that's down from April of last year, and actually several
Lower.
Aprils, yeah.
13 the last 5 years. Low.
However, last month was higher than the previous month, so in the corresponding year. So we really have very little control over that line, as you know. We can somewhat control our outcome with the sales tax by doing hard work and getting people to come in to business here. But this is just our share of the income tax receipts that Illinois receives. But there again, the only control we have on that line item is I'll say it again, the census, because this is a census-driven tax. And the more people on your census, the more dollars you get. So, but anyway, that's running okay. I think we're pretty close to what the budget is on that line, so no big things to report there. The next thing is the salaries. That's basically the next 2-3 pages. So for March, our actual salaries were $227,353. Citywide, that includes water, sewer, and we budgeted $266 for the same period of time. So we were ahead of budget for the month. Looking year to date, we spent $871,000 in change on salaries, and we budgeted $799. And we're still seeing the effects of the retroactive pay adjustment for the police contract, and to some degree, the 3 payroll months we had in either January or February still has some carryover. So, but that over budget number of $71,000 you see there is smaller than it was this time a month ago. So it's going the right direction there. So we'll see what April brings. And then to feed it into that is the last page. So again, this is just the general fund, so this is not water sewer. This is the general fund, so through 3 months, through all the departments in the general fund, we have spent $1,228,000, and we have budgeted $1,244,000, so we're slightly under budget as a fund. And you can see the different overs and unders by department there. At the same time, we have actually received $31,000 more than we budgeted this time, so we're in pretty good condition. For the first 3 months, we have a $48,000 surplus in general fund. So obviously that changes from month to month, but better to be positive there than negative at this point, so can't complain with that at the moment. Any questions on those reports? Yes.
I assume that under the police thing, that for the year, that 34,600 and change, and then the other, that's because of all the back pay that we finally caught up.
Yes.
That's the back pay.
You're referring just to the salary report, right?
Yes,
Yeah, right.
Those two top.
Yeah,
Well,
that's exactly what that is.
Okay. And while we're on the police, are we at full staff, or do we have everybody back from the academies and stuff?
We got Chase Rednauer graduates this week. Rednauer graduates Thursday.
Uh-huh.
Now Joseph Mazer, who moved here from Nashville with his wife, without getting into too much detail, had some personal issues, and he went back to Nashville effective April 9th. Things didn't exactly go the way he planned on them going in his personal life. So
Okay.
he returned to Nashville, so we've got
Okay.
one slot open.
How long will it be before the graduate from the academy that he can actually be on patrol by himself?
We met today to go over his field training. He will have, he's got 10 weeks minimum field training, because we have a 10-week program, although he has a 2-week military annual training in the middle of that, his mandatory military training. So anticipated, I think the anticipated date is around the 3rd or 4th week of July that he's got on, if he completes field training successfully.
And the young man that went back to Nashville, we didn't have to train him because
No, he was trained from
He already
Nashville.
had.
All right, thank you.
Just speaking to that, that was not, I want to make sure everybody's clear, that was not Mr. Mazur's intent to do to the city.
No, I don't think so.
It's just a bad state of affairs, and he felt going back was in the best interest of his money.
I really
Thank
hate
you.
to lose him because he was a great resource for our patrolman with his background, but I certainly understand his reasoning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Next item under new business is the review of grant writing contract and consideration of a part-time position. I know you and I have talked about this a couple times, about possibility of looking at alternative to Mr. Hollow.
Yeah, I think it's time to move on. I haven't, had, I can't say I haven't had any, but I've had very minimal conversation with him. So the long and short of it is that one of the things that I know that I hear from Harold Sheffer, I know I hear it from Kerry Nelson at IDOT, I hear it from various people, is that the facts is that Murphysboro is, generally a low-income community. Our median income here is around $20,000 a year, and so the upside to that is that there are a lot of things that won't necessarily even have to have income surveys done in some places, and I think that there's no question in my mind that a person hired, dedicated to pursuing grant dollars could have some success here. Now, we've certainly not been bashful in spending money so far this year. We've got some street projects we're going to talk about a little bit later on, but we need to also keep in mind that the funding streams for those, are from dedicated revenue streams meant for projects like that. So it just really comes down to, you know, how do we want to approach that? Something else that I think I forget about it all the time, is that, you know, Greater Egypt is an organization here that we pay dues to be a member of, and we never ask them to do anything for us. And I know that they would if we ask. So, or could coordinate with somebody that we hired. So that's just my thoughts on it, WJ. I'll open it up to anybody else who wants to speak to it. If you've got more, WJ, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, and I think I said it when, I think it's a position that if you get the right person in there, it pays for itself. You know, if you put it out there for advertisement, just like we do every other position, and you interview and take the most, you know, qualified person, you know, that's willing to do it, what we decide we're willing to pay somebody to do it for, then, and you make them accountable and come to meetings and tell what they're working on and do that, you know, if they're finding us money, they're paying, you know, they're essentially making it worth our while to pay them to do that.
Yeah.
And I think you have to have somebody who's required to have their butt in the seat in an office at the, you know, city building that's, you know, that is going to do that and be vested in doing that because their job's on the line if they're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like any other job. If there's no consequences to not doing it other than, you know, you can use it as a, you know, I'll need a little extra money, so I'll put a little bit of time in here, but if you don't, then you don't. So, I mean, I'll open it up to anybody else's thoughts on it, Dan, you have.
Mayor, have we had any correspondence from when Brian Hollow was driving in traffic and he was supposed to get back to you? I think that was at the last meeting you stated that.
No, I didn't hear back from him.
Well, I think everybody remembers I was very much for hiring Brian, but like the previous three, I think before him, I think it's time to move on. We need to get somebody to write grants. Now, that's got some experience, like on a part-time thing, but, you know, I don't have any idea what kind of a salary. I think we've got a spot at the administration's office. We find a desk for him to work out of up there, I hope. But I think you brought up a good point. They need to be accountable to this council and report to us at least on once a month at one of our meetings, you know. And I agree with what the mayor said. We're losing a lot of money because I guess we've made bad choices in the past. We've made the best choice that we thought we could, but they haven't turned out well.
I mean, it didn't cost us anything.
Well, yeah.
So-
Well, it has cost us,
Time.
it's cost us, what, 8 or 9 months?
No, we have to pay legal fees to drop a contract, and that's where I'm going. We as a city have a contract with them.
Then we can,
30
there's
days.
an option in there.
30
It
days.
is an
30
option
days,
to,
yeah.
that's the only thing.
Yeah, either party.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, we haven't lost anything. It really was the understanding that this entire time that he was accumulating this volume of information in support of the city that he could bring to bear on these projects. But if he hasn't done any of that legwork, then yeah, I agree, because that would still have to happen. And if it hasn't happened to date, then we're out several more months because he doesn't have this baseline document or whatever that he was suggested that he would create.
Or that he had already started.
I just, Mayor, if I could, I just want to make one more statement and then I'll be quiet about this. Procrastinating on doing something on this is only going to cost us money. I think this is something we need to act on. We have to notify him, I think, with a 30-day notice.
Correct.
And I think the sooner that happens, the sooner the clock starts running, the sooner, that doesn't mean we can't advertise if we come up with what we're willing to spend and try to find out what's out there. Quite truthfully, when we've advertised before, we didn't get much response.
I don't remember us advertising before for that position.
Maybe we didn't.
Well, the paid people in the past have got nothing.
Well, we paid them, yeah.
$500.
We
We never
paid-
saw her again.
Yeah.
Well, I'd make a motion to send him the 30-day notice.
I'll second that motion or whatever.
Now we have a motion by Alderman Irvis and a second by Alderman Bastian. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. So then do we want to talk about, I mean, do we want to put it, do some research and figure out what's a fair, you know, amount to pay a part-time grant writer? And discuss whether that's an option or not, or, I mean, or do we want to, I mean, like I said, I think it's as a salaried position or as a, you know, paid position as opposed to a contract per grant gotten, you would be better off.
Certainly level of accountability is much higher with an employee.
I don't know why, I mean, but in my mind, it seems like somewhere a number in the $15,000 to $20,000 range comes to my mind. But I don't know if that is accurate. It's just, Mr. Urbis.
Well, I was just wondering if anybody at the Egyptian group would have,
Greater Egypt?
yeah, if they would have input on what it would typically pay.
Well,
Am I-
I think when we were talking about the contract before, and I looked back at some of my notes, I think, you know, the average was anywhere between 34 and 73 on a nationwide basis for a full-time grant writer. 34,073, I think is what I found. I would say, based on our known numbers, we would probably fall in the lower of that average on a consistent salary basis on other jobs throughout the country.
Right.
So, I mean, and that would be right in your $15,000 to $20,000 for a part-time range. You know?
right,
But I think it's something we should do a little bit more research on.
agree.
So I'd be happy to look up some numbers, you know, if anybody else wants to also for next meeting, and we can keep that item on there.
Numbers in a job description and.
Yeah. Well, I think we should also talk to Greater Egypt. I mean, they may have an idea of what these people are being paid for part-time positions, and they also may have some people that
Grant writers
are
available.
capable of
Well,
doing it.
why don't I just contact Kerry Minnis
Uh-huh.
and invite him to our next meeting? I know he's been here before, and I
Yeah.
know he'd be happy to attend again, and I could just, we could bring that research back. Kerry can talk to us about what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, that would be good.
I know I wasn't gonna say anything else, but I can't help myself. Who's gonna send this notice so we can get it, so it don't fall between the cracks? Who's gonna send out the notice to cancel the contract?
Well, I think it'd just be drafted by, this doesn't have to be anything overly legal, does it, Richard? I mean.
No, I don't think so. If Sandra's going to draft it, I can look it over. And whatever.
Yeah, if you can draft it and I can sign it.
You know, it doesn't have to state any basis, it does not require cause to terminate, it's just 30 days written.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I can draft that, but if you like.
So I think
Where Sandra can draft it.
Sandra can do that during her coffee breaks, or soda breaks. She doesn't drink coffee probably.
Yeah. Okay.
If no more questions on that, we'll move to the next item under new business, which is consideration of hiring a temporary part-time employee for water billing department. I'm not that aware of that one, so.
I think, I talked to Sandra about that, and Sandra, if you want to expand on that, that's fine, or I can, it doesn't matter.
Basically, as you guys know, we have a significant amount of debt in our water department. So after talking to Scott, I proposed hiring a temporary person only for the summer months, approximately 10 weeks, 12 hours a week. Would cost us around $1,600 for the entire summer, just for the primary focus of debt collection, is what I'm proposing.
We have more than $1,600 in debt to collect?
Oh.
$16.01.
Okay, yeah.
16.
Put another 100,000 with that.
So are there any questions on?
The lady that you have last year, the teacher.
Yeah, that's why I wondered if she would be
That's
there.
who I want to reach out to.
Yeah.
I think personally, if we don't do that,
We may as well write
then
that
we
off.
might as well just pay everybody's water bill, including mine. Because, I mean, it's just, I mean, we have certain houses, I think, that their aunt or their cousin or their brother or their sister or their uncle or their stepdad or their dad comes in and hooks up water for that same place. And if we ran a scenario on there, I think we would find more than what we might think. The only thing I know to do there is that house, whatever the deposit is now, it doubles the next time. And just, you know, you're gonna have to break the cycle, or gonna have to have somebody that get the water bills collected. And we need to do something, the sooner the better. And I'd make a motion to hire someone on a part-time basis
How many hours a week did you say? 12.
for
10 weeks.
for 10 weeks. I think,
120 hours.
huh?
120 hours.
120
Okay.
hours, and,
I'll
what you
second
said was
that.
$10 an hour.
I think we already have.
Okay,
We have a
if
second.
it's $10 an hour, so if it's 120 hours, it's only gonna be $1,200, guys. So, instead of 1,600.
Plus,
So we,
plus benefits.
so we have a motion by Mr. Bratton,
Yeah.
and a second by Mr. Campos. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm in favor, I'm in favor, I just, you know, good luck getting a dime, but you know, you gotta try.
Yeah, I don't know, it may be $1,600 that we won't collect
Right.
anything, but
I
if we
mean, I
don't,
don't
if they don't have
anticipate-
time to do it.
We've actually had very good success with the ones that we've turned over
Okay.
to our collection agency,
Right.
credit collection partners. It's just a matter of someone actually
Processing.
processing it
Okay.
to them,
Yeah.
and I've been the primary person doing that, and it just,
No, I mean,
I can't focus
just,
on it.
good luck with it, that's all I'm saying.
Do we need to do that? So, let's-
Seem more sincere
let's
than
do that.
John.
All right, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will carry. Is there any public comment under budget and finance?
Sandra, do you use the state recovery?
We have stopped using them, because it's really just a once a year, we did not have good luck with them.
We've had good luck with it. Once a year, not always, you give people that are working at certain places, you still get,
We submitted a bunch to them and did not get much at all.
we've got over $100,000 back in one.
So you're talking, this person's gonna get the information to the okay, so they're not doing the collection, so, okay.
How credit collection partners work is they have a portal set up that we have pathways to. And essentially, you know, the client, in our case us, goes into that portal, sets up each account, name, address, driver's license number, whatever, amount due, all this stuff. And then once they have access to it in their database, their collectors go after it.
And then they just get a percentage of that.
They take
amount after
25%.
they've collected it.
And they're very active. I
Right,
use them for my
yeah.
own office as well. And you can go on there on any account and look and see every notation that they've made on that person's account, when they call, when they
Letters
talk
that
to
have
them,
gone out.
all that. You can see all that for each person. So it's a very interactive system. They're very good at it.
Okay, that takes us out of budget and finance. We'll go to building and grounds. Alderman McComb.
No old business, no new business. Do we have any public comment? Thank you.
Very good. Takes us to community relations, chaired by Mr. John Urbis.
Same business, same, no old business or new business.
May I add some new business?
You may.
Okay. I put put one of these out on everyone's place. I don't know if you've heard about this or not, but they are trying to raise some money for the cross at Bald Knob, and I know that's not Murphysboro, but it also is community, and they're doing a golf scramble on May the 4th. For Bald Knob, and they're looking for people or groups of people to sponsor a hole. And I don't know if any of you would be interested personally in donating $10 a piece and sponsoring a hole as a city council for this. It's $100 total to sponsor a hole. I don't know if you want to or not, but I told Mr. Swable that I would ask. Comments?
If everybody else puts in, you can count me in for 10.
I'll jump in.
Yeah,
And if you
I'll do it
have-
just so Danny reaches in his.
Just to what?
Just so you reach in your pocket.
Well, it's coming up on the 4th, which is what, next week, so I kind of need to be taking care of this, and I don't mind fronting the money, I just as soon not pay it all myself.
You got change for 100?
Yes, I probably.
I don't have 100, so
Can
can I borrow 50?
just give the 100.
It was a sarcastic answer, anyway.
yeah, I think you've got.
And if you think we shouldn't, it's okay too, but I think it's a good
If I
cause.
don't do it now,
And-
I'll pull it out, I'll forget it.
It's a great idea, Barb.
Anyway.
I don't know how I had $10 to be the truth.
I usually ask.
I'll throw in on it. I think we're all in.
Yeah, we're all good with that.
Okay, so we'll just throw
Let's do
$10
it.
in somewhere, huh?
All right, pass it down to me.
Yeah.
I just I need to know who's gonna do it, so.
What's that moth doing
WJ
flying around?
And Gloria,
I'm in.
and
I'm
Mike's in, Danny's in under pressure.
Gary came back
John,
just
you'll do
to,
it?
Yes.
Mayor?
You got it.
Okay. Herbie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gary? It's up to you.
What?
He wasn't in here. See, I need $10.
Isn't that convenient?
Well, that's good. I'll give you 10, you give me 20.
Okay. We are talking about sponsoring a hole for the golf
Yeah, that's fine. I'll
scramble.
do that.
And if we all give $10, a hole is $100. Okay, so Gary, you gonna do it too?
Is that on this or on,
It's on this.
okay.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Now, you don't have to get mine.
Do you want to, Russell?
No.
Okay. And what's your name?
I have my reading.
And that's okay. We got 10. I'll pay it.
Okay.
Okay.
I want a receipt though, from you.
Okay, I'll do that.
Oh, the check's in the mail.
I'll have the director down there send you one. I'm sure she would be glad to.
Oh, no.
You know who that is?
You tell Teresa to leave me alone. Okay.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate
Get out of
it.
there before it costs me some
Yeah.
more money.
All right, I think we're done with community relations, unless there's public comment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Urbis. That takes us to public improvement, chaired by Mr. Mike Bastian. Mike?
Old business update on the fence. I just am proud to say that it's moving forward. They're actually communicating with one another a little bit, in between hollering, I think, but they're moving forward. We have no new business. If we have any public comment, I'll close the meeting.
I just have one
Yes, sir.
question. The house on South 20th and Dewey,
That's got a hole in the roof.
yeah, and the side, and
Mm-hmm.
does somebody own that? What's the Scarsville Methodist
I
home?
think the city owns it.
I was thinking we got that.
Yeah, Eric, that is a city-owned house. I just think it's on the list to be demolished.
Okay,
I think.
What house-
I think it's on the list.
Okay. 20th and South 20th and Dewey.
Oh, they're close to where the old grocery store used to be, Bucks used to be, is that
Right.
what? Is that where?
I
it
think
used to
that's
be?
what he's talking about. yeah.
Okay, right across there by the Masonic, by
Yes.
Sparrow.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think Alderman Bratton has a question.
I don't know if this is the right place. Maybe I should have brought it up under community relations. I heard a rumor that the former Masonic Lodge, that they were actually bringing some people in there in handcuffs.
So I met with the CEO of Spiro Health Services 2 weeks ago because Spiro is who took it over. I think it's a very good organization, but I had concerns because the Mount Vernon chief and I have talked about, Spiro is based in Mount Vernon, talked about the problems that Mount Vernon has had over the years with the kids there. Spiro, from a financial standpoint, is a little different than the Masonic Lodge. The Masonic Lodge, you know, the Masons aid the cost of taking care of the kids. Spiro has contracted with DCFS to increase the number of beds there. the kids that are coming there, that they increase to, are going to be more traumatized. So to avoid those problems, I'm working on protocols for handling certain situations with Spiro, helping them write those protocols so that we can head some things off. We're also going to do some early intervention stuff between our officers and the kids as they come in, basically introduce ourselves to them, developing a relationship with the kids, and trying to head off the runaways, the sexual assault complaints that Mount Vernon has a lot of problems with, things like that. We're trying to do from our end what we can, but they're going to double the beds because from a financial standpoint they have to. But I believe the man is genuine. I believe they're a good organization. We just have to do our part to help them keep it a healthy campus. So we're trying. I'll try to get the protocols knocked out in the next week or so that I can sit down with them and say, this is what we need to handle each of these types of situations. And it's basically the situations that Mount Vernon has encountered. And Mount Vernon, it was expressed to me by Spiro, has not communicated well with Spiro Family Services. There's not a lot of alliance between the police department and them. They would like more. So we're trying to build the alliance so that we can be good partners with them.
Good. That's not the news I wanted to hear, but good that you're on top of it.
It is what it is. We have to deal with it. So we will deal with it. We will get it figured out.
So do they take juvenile offenders or just from DCFS?
They take DCFS, but a lot of people in DCFS are juvenile offenders that are assigned to DCFS as guardians. And my ability to have past history information is very much hampered by the juvenile laws in Illinois. So I'm going to have to go with what I can get as far as intel and then what we build as relationships. The plus thing is all the kids that are slated to come in to increase beds presently are female, and Taylor Riggs figures greatly into this plan I have as far as developing a relationship between our female officer and the females and trying to build a bond so we can head things off. I don't know that it's going to work, but I'm going to try to avoid what happened in Mount Vernon.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between the abuse to neglect kids and the delinquent kids.
Well, the problem is, Mr. Urbis, I mean, there's a couple kids that I've gotten out of town because they kept being on probation. They ended up being in DCFS custody, moved to other parts of the state. We won't know if they're CAN kids or if they're delinquent kids. We're just not allowed to know because of the new juvenile laws. Yeah. The CAN is child abuse and neglect.
Because I know Mount Vernon, because I've sent clients there.
Yeah.
To keep them out of prison.
I think part of the problems in Mount Vernon are the lack of communication from the police department with Spiro, so we're trying to have that right.
Thanks.
Any other comments from the alderman? Any public comment? Okay, with that being said, I'll close public improvement.
All right, that takes us to Public Works, chaired by Mr. Dan Bratton. Dan?
Okay, old business, approval of streets for the 2018 street maintenance program. I want to apologize. I spent about 15 minutes looking in the file drawer that I have, and I couldn't find last month's packet to where I knew what the cost and stuff was on it. So I don't know if any of the other aldermen have theirs or if they've looked that over.
I have.
So I'm putting this out there for input from any of the aldermen.
I mean, I kind of looked at it, and we could do, I kind of prioritized it like we talked about doing last time, and had Shoemaker obviously as the top priority. I've got a copy here. Okay. And then Hanson Street, that is pretty bad. And keeping in mind, trying to get as much bang for our buck too that we talked about. And then 17th Street, Spruce to Oak Street, which is pretty bad down there, and been down that a lot lately. And then Gartside, 22nd Street, Gartside to Hortons. We could do all four of those streets for the 315, 428 according to those amounts. That's right about. You know, that was looking at it and getting as many done as we could for the amount that we have talked about spending. It kind of looked like that would be feasible to me. But that's just my opinion.
I'd like to have some more input. I mean, I appreciate WJ, but
yeah, I drove them all. I'm in agreement with him.
Yeah.
To start with Shoemaker, and then I'm okay with Hanson 17th. And
I am too.
Spruce
Yeah.
Oak.
That's what we came
What'd
with
you
more?
say after Spruce? I missed that one.
17th Street, Spruce to Oak Street.
And then
yeah, okay.
22nd Street, Garside to Hortense was the last.
Okay.
Isn't that a brick street now on South 17th?
Yes, it is. Before we do that, you have to go through the Historical Preservation Committee. I believe.
Well, that's what I mean, if you fix it, people's gonna complain about the rough ride they got now. But when you blacktop over that brick street, they're gonna really throw a fit about
And
that.
that's what Hanson Street is blacktop over brick.
I mean, it's just something to look at on it.
Yeah, you're right, Gary. It's awful now.
Overlay.
Huh?
South 17.
Down that far.
Yeah, part of our office.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, it is. But that's over brick too. Well, South 15's over brick.
Do we have any other input from the south here on the?
The south siders.
That is the south, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
You're right.
We can't do anything with South 20th till we find out that's a bad spot, but till we find out about the sewer. There's nothing we can do where the sewer line caved in that time of fixing it till we make sure the sewer is solid under it. So I mean,
South 20th, I don't think we even had an estimate for anything on South 20th.
He said 22nd.
And I think that's north.
But regardless, you're right, Gary.
yeah, I mean, I know I get a lot of complaints on South 20th, but like I tell them, we can't do anything till we're sure the sewer is solid under it.
And Tim Lee has corresponded. They went back and forth for about a week and a half with the guy that lines the sewer. And I really appreciate Tim, but he even gave him his cell phone number and left a message for him to call him anytime that they need to talk. And he's getting the measurements of the pipe, what size pipe, and also the length so that he can come down and see if it's feasible and running his camera through there. That's the last I've talked to Tim. I didn't catch up with him today. So what's your recommendation was how much money?
It was 315, 428.70 according to those bids.
315, 428. I think he said 70. Yeah, 70.
Yeah, I mean, those are estimates.
Estimates.
Could come in lower,
And
could
that is
come in
for
higher.
Shoemaker.
Mr. Evans,
17.
I want to revisit your
315 and then
thoughts
that's a total $315,000. Okay.
funding and what's available and all those things.
Well, that's fairly close to the 300,000 mark that I had mentioned previously, so I think that still gives you, what, $165,000 cushion for doomsday type of road events. So,
And to be clear, that amount does include on the Hanson Street, the 7th, 8th plus the intersection. There was a bid for doing it without the intersection that was about $35,000 cheaper. But, I mean, that intersection is probably the worst part of that.
It is the
No,
worst
if
part,
we do the
yeah.
rest
Yeah.
without that intersection, I think.
And looking at this, it appears that it is an estimate. We've got the design fee in there, we've got the construction engineering in there, so that also includes J.T. Blankenship's fees on this project as an estimate. We won't know until we get this. So, Mary, you have any input? I know that you don't like to spend money on streets.
Would you prefer alleys? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No.
right.
Alleys?
Well, I think that this is something we've needed to do for a while. The only thing that, comes to my mind is I always look at Oweta Mills sitting out here in the audience, and I know that we've got some work that still needs to be done down there, mostly with her. I mean, there are sections of the street down there that are okay, and there's sections that are god-awful because the, trash trucks have tore up the guttering mostly in Valley Ridge and in Bridgewood. And so, that's sort of a situation where I at least want to acknowledge it, especially with you being here, Oweta, because it's a project that needs to be done. But Shoemaker, of course, resurfacing there certainly I think would be welcome from the Housing Authority because that's needed as well. So.
And there were a couple on here, like I went out and drove all these. There's a couple, Illinois Avenue and 15th Street are probably worse than 22nd Street. And, but as far as getting as many, you know, those two projects were a little bit more expensive. Up over, 15th Street was $203,000, Illinois Avenue was 108.
Yeah.
You know, and my thought was, how much can we get done? Can we get multiple projects done?
I think that makes sense, WJ.
I think so too.
I think we can alleviate a lot of our problem if we could ever get wrapped around going to small garbage trucks. Keeping them out of the alleys will pay for this
That's
street
like the
repair.
zombie issue, you know.
And I know it's probably not gonna happen while I'm still here on the council, but as long as we have those overweighted garbage trucks running around the curves and the cowboys driving them, they're gonna tear the streets up, and they're gonna tear the alleys up too.
Well,
So-
they can drive on the streets instead of the alleys. And the alleys can just, and then we'll go back at war, so.
I think it'd be
That's
easier to
what-
blacktop all the brick streets than what you're gonna hear about having to carry your garbage out to the front, although I do it every day. So what's the pleasure of the council? Give me some input
I
so
would
we
like
can move
to
on.
make a motion to approve the surfacing of those 4 streets that we have.
All right, we have a
Kind
motion
of
to do
going
the
on
4th
budget.
Street.
Which is Shoemaker, Hanson, 17th, or we go check on 17th first with the brick, or?
It's oak that has
Or
the.
it's the oak, I said 17th.
Yeah.
Or spruce and oak, yeah.
You've got to, that's in the Historical Society, you've got to check with them first.
Yeah.
But not
Well,
on
and
set.
I don't know if you have to check with them. I know that any construction that we do, we're supposed to
I
check with
think
them.
that being a
We have
good
the
neighbor-
last word as council, but the thing is, they want to keep it as historical as possible. Although I drive down those streets every single day, living in that area, and they're awful.
I
Every
think-
one of them.
I think being a good neighbor with the Historical Society in that area, that we ought to check with whoever's the head.
I think we should.
So you want to approve the 3 without the spruce?
I think if we'll
The
get the
Oak
bid,
Street
we
one is
we
the
can
one
bid
that
the 4 different streets,
Sure.
but, correct me when I'm wrong, Harold, I mean, but bid the 4 different streets and then as a one package, and then a package is just the 3 because of the other, as an alternate if we knock the one off.
We can always approve it if something comes up.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's
All right,
true.
we have a
That is
motion.
true.
I'll second.
We have a second by Mr. Pittman. All in favor, aye,
What is the motion?
to do, what was the street again?
Shoemaker, Hanson, 17th. It's spruce oak, Gort side to Hortense.
22nd.
22nd, it's north 22nd, but it's between Gort side and
Horton.
Hortense.
Okay, so the
We
motion
can
is
always
to,
back off of that Oak Street one if
Okay.
they decide they don't want to. At least we'll have
But
approval.
if Harold's gonna put it out
Yeah,
for bid as an alternate, it would be a deductive on the bid. That way you can bid it one time and you know where you're at.
okay, yeah.
So, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
I can give Gina a copy of that for the list. For the-
Harold needs it. Here, thank you. Okay. Any other old business? Under new business?
I do have one quick
Okay.
question for our legal counsel. Is this are we gonna need to adopt any sort of motor fuel resolution or anything for this type of maintenance?
It'll be done, there'll be appropriation.
Okay. All right. It looked like your mind was moving there for a moment, Richard. and I-
Actually, I was thinking about the Historic Preservation District.
Okay.
I don't recall checking with them in the past.
And my thought, and I don't know for certain, but the ordinance establishing that historic district, I don't believe it applies to the streets.
It may not.
I would have to go back and look at it to confirm that. I believe it just applies to the structures of the residents
I think-
themselves.
But
not-
even
that also
at
could be
that,
added
I
to
think
the
it's a
list
good
by-
neighbor thing.
That got added to the list by somebody familiar with that area and how that would be a improvement for them getting people down to
I
that
agree.
area. for like
I think we should
street
talk
fair
with
and
the
museums.
committee.
I think that we still should check with them, and hopefully we'll get their blessing.
I agree with that.
I think it's a good neighbor
Okay,
thing.
there are no No more old business. Under new business, discussion regarding repairs to the potholes. I know Darren had, the crew have been out.
They have been.
And patching potholes.
All right, if we get one person talking at a time here, please.
I do know that Darren has had the street department out there patching poles. Do they have them all patched yet? No, they don't, but they are working on it.
That's what I told them, because they called me and they were complaining about it, and I say, I know we're working, and then I got a phone call, you know, it's being patched. So I say, we're still in the rainy season, hasn't even started, we're just getting out of the winter, but I'm sure that the city's doing whatever, but I'll just pass it on.
I saw the truck out today.
Pardon?
I saw the truck out
Yeah,
today.
and it was out yesterday also. I think it's been noticed.
There is one big hole that I saw, but it's in an alley, but still it's used for Apple Festival, and it is right behind by the old train station, by the start in that alley, behind building services and all that, or before you.
I know
get
right
to-
where you're talking about.
It is almost as a link. It is a
Okay,
big one.
I'll try to remember to go by and pass that on to Darren.
Yes, so I haven't
Or you-
checked lately.
Can you take care of that?
What street
Pardon?
is that, Leanne?
Yeah, I don't know.
What alley?
The exact
It's,
location.
alley between 13th Street and 14th Street.
13 and 14, or actually from Regions Bank, the alley behind, but north.
Yeah. It's north side of Walnut, the alley, the first alley, north of Walnut between 14th
14.
and 13th.
Exactly, 14 and 12, actually.
Okay, whatever. Okay.
But there is a huge, and I haven't gone and checked that
Yeah,
yet.
building
Okay.
services, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
public comment? We're out of public work.
Just drive through there later.
All right, thank you very much. That takes us to Public Safety Chair by Mr. Russell Brown. Russell?
And the whole business concerns with no parking approval on Sanford Locust. You decide what you're gonna do about that.
I have no update because I put no effort into trying to solve that problem since the last meeting. I've been too busy running around chasing solar companies.
I've got a little input on that, I think.
Mr. Bratton?
That's one block off of Walnut North, right?
Correct.
There's I think a city ordinance or a state ordinance one that you can't park within so much of the intersection. I met with Darren, measured it off. 2 days later, the original X that was put there, part of it was blacked out and a new yellow stripe going across. So it's by.
It's already done.
It's already done.
Great.
So what's been
Mr.
done?
Blake?
Well,
What was
I
done?
think the city council has enacted an ordinance making the no parking. So whatever we're going to change, we need to specify and approve what we're doing so we can put it in an ordinance form as far as what the parking or no parking is going to be in that area.
Sounds like we already did it.
We've eliminated that.
Isn't there an
We went by, I
ordinance of
think
how
it's-
far you can park away from the? Chief. Bring up last time about an ordinance, how far you could park away from the intersection? That we already have one?
I think it's 20 feet or something like that, if I remember correct.
I mean, there is already a city ordinance
That's
that
what I
mimics the
mean.
state law that's 20 feet.
Yeah.
And the marking, from what you're saying, just shows the 20 feet in yellow paint.
Correct.
So, I mean, I don't know why you really, other than getting rid of
We
the
just
other
need
ordinance
to-
you passed, I mean, we already had ordinances on the
We
books.
just have to
that
get rid of
dictate
the old ordinance.
We need to vote on that to eliminate the
Yes,
other ordinance.
To eliminate the no parking, establish, I don't know the ordinance number, and to repeal that ordinance.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
John, did you second?
All in old
Okay,
business.
hold on just a minute to eliminate
Well, I haven't heard
no parking ordinance. It
There's so much
was
to do about that.
18, 1, 2, or 3.
I'll teach that in your law class,
That's
John.
right.
Favor.
We did an admin law class.
We don't have anything under new business.
I have something, and Chief, this is public safety, there was a report, of, out of Bulgaria, somebody was messing up with a car last night, for Megan Austin, and then she already reported that to the police department. But I have heard also a complaint for a couple of neighbors in the back of Roberta Drive that, I don't know if the people have been trying to break in there, or so, I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, I'll be honest, we got devoured last night. I put extra officers out I put auxiliary out to supplement patrol last Thursday through Sunday. To try to curb some of this, had no problems. Old auxiliary, last night we got hit in several sectors. I've got additional auxiliary back out, we're trying to work on it. We've got somebody that is killing us on burglaries and auto burglaries right now.
Yes.
Every time we take down one crew, we get another crew, so. But we've spent all day on it, we're working on it, but I've also got extra deployments out for the next, I don't wanna say for how long it open means, but for a while.
That's okay.
So, but yes, ma'am, we are on it, we're working on it.
Thank you, I know, I just told them that I will bring this up into the meeting, and,
Yeah, and I've met with several citizens, and I have told several citizens, especially in certain neighborhoods, that I am more than willing if somebody wants to host a meeting in their living room to come sit down and talk to them, because people aren't reporting things, and that helps us solve things. But I haven't heard back on any of the sit downs yet, because I'm always willing to sit down and inform them and listen to their issues, and it helps us solve cases. But we are crawling all over it.
I will pass that along.
Okay.
Because especially on Roberta Drive, I walk that, and at night, because of the woods, bless you, it gets darker. So I don't know if this is an old town or what, but the trees and the woods and the back it make it especially darker. And
To be honest, the majority of our city is.
it is pretty dark.
But we are absolutely doing our best, and guys and girls are all over it.
Okay,
Can I
thank you so
ask
much.
Chief what areas are getting hit the hardest, or is it all over? Or?
We, 17th, west to the railroad tracks,
north?
Walnut, Shoemaker,
Oh.
straight up 14th, and then Roberta and 16th got hit last night.
Mhm.
So we've got a pretty compressed geographic pattern. And every time we take off a clip of thieves, we get another clip of thieves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have anything on the new business? Public comments? Come out of public safety.
Thank you, Alderman Brown. That takes us to personnel chaired by Ms. Barb Hughes.
We have no old business that I'm aware of. Under new business, we do have a discussion regarding the process for selection of fire chief. We have two members of the fire department that have expressed interest, and I think that, well, several things need to happen. I think we need to reach out to them and tell them that we are also, we will put them into an interview process. And we also, I would like to see us advertise for it also. I think that it will, well, I think that we should just look in all avenues. I would like to do this as soon as possible because unfortunately, it's an unacceptable thing, but he's leaving. I don't want to wait till September and us not even be on top of this at all. And I think that mayor will probably make some kind of interview committee like we have before and interview these people along with Chief Swafford. Yes, Dan?
I'd make that in a motion that we advertise outside of the department also.
Second.
In a form of a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Alderman Bratton. And I'll get with Sandra and Chief, and we'll take care of that. And then Mayor can form a committee for an interview process when we get to that point. Any questions on any of that you have? Any public comment on personnel? I think we're done.
All right, thank you so much. That takes us to the mayor's report, and I did get a couple of bids, and I apologize, I don't have them with me, from both Republic Services and Burris, because Mr. Pittman had expressed to me, and I had also gotten some feedback from a couple of residents. You know, we don't really, I know Ava and I think several other communities have a place where recycling can be brought to be dropped off. WJ?
I think the close one, and I think Sandra remind me, are the health department and the extension office.
Extension office, I go to those all the time.
Which are both out of 10, you know.
Right. But Republic offers a service where essentially they call it single stream recycling, where instead of a bin that has a whole bunch of different doors and you put plastic in one and cardboard in another, you just throw it all in one place into one bin, and then it is sorted at a facility that they have later, supposedly.
We tried that one time before, and that was outrageous.
As far as we know.
I have no reason to believe otherwise, but
I don't believe it.
so.
That's pretty at least.
But WJ, I sent those to you. Do you remember what the pricing was on that? I hate to put you on the spot.
Approximately, but not exact. I think, I mean, not, I don't remember them well enough to say that.
Yeah.
I mean,
When we checked on it before, a few years ago, you could buy it, and they still charge you $50 every time they come and emptied it.
you know what, I may have them right here.
And it got to be, by the year, pretty expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And we got the two, you know, just on the outskirts of town.
Right. It may be a situation where we want to, you know, help to publicize the other access points. I don't know. But in any case, WJ, are you?
I'm trying to pull them up, yeah.
Can I ask a question then?
Sure.
Who puts up those blue ones out at the health department and at the home extension office? Who owns those? How is that? I mean, that isn't Burris.
It's the health department.
It's the health department itself. And someone told me, and I don't know if this is correct or not, because we had looked at trying to get one in town on that parking lot across from the Methodist church that we own. And someone that was researching that said that they wouldn't allow that type in town. Is that correct? Does anybody know anything about that?
I've never heard anything like that.
That's why they're on the outskirts. But if we could get one through the health department like that, I think you're gonna, I'd like to see it separated is my thing. I think they're gonna take that whole thing and just dump it somewhere with anyway, and then we'll
Mr.
just
Evans?
pay for it.
There is a contact that I know of at the health department whose job is that whole program.
That recycling program?
Carrie Gale is her name.
What is it?
Carrie Gale.
Carrie Gale?
Used to be Cruz.
Yeah, she was Carrie Cruz.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll just leave this on the agenda and bring back those numbers.
I do have the numbers right here.
Oh, okay.
So Republic was a two 8-yard containers. $147.75 per month was the base rate. There was a delivery charge, one-time charge also to get it there of $70. It looked like originally $222.36 that they discounted by $152.36 to get it down to $70 to get it here. And then Burris was at $40 a month plus $75 every time we call in to have it done.
And that was like a 16-yard
Yeah, it was a
container.
It says 15 yard.
Okay, 15-yard.
Mayor, there's also one behind the old high school, which is what, the middle school now, that I think Burris owns. If you might want to go by there and look at that one, or someone may want to see if that's the kind they're talking about.
Okay. Well, I'll do some more research on it. I haven't had an outpouring of people, and I think that maybe people just aren't aware of these other services that are not that far. I think it would be good to have one in town, but I don't know. I'm not ready for us to adopt one of these other tonight. Mr. Bratton.
Where you're talking about the recycling stuff, I know that they're recycling clothes. They've got these little houses and stuff that you're supposed to put But the one on North 14th Street, in front of Hum's Garage, most of the time every week, you'll see, I've seen bedposts, a bunch of plastic bags and stuff on the outside, and they may sit there for 5 or 6 days.
And that's not a recycling bin, Danny.
I know it's
They
not.
process them and sell them for rags.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think that whoever sets those up, I'm sure that the property owners aren't getting any rent off of that. There's one by, it's part of Stark there, just up from Public Works too, that those need to be picked up on a more closely, don't take so long to come and get it. They get on a weekly basis or more than that, because it's terrible. And I pass that one on 14th Street multiple times a day.
If they get a vacant lot, they don't ask permission. They just put one on it. Because when I took care of the lot at 22nd and Walnut, there was one up there.
Yeah.
And finally, I called them, that third time I called them, I said, well, you're going to pick it up down at Tweedy's because I'm going to have it towed. They come and got it. And the same thing up there, mattresses.
They put mattresses, couch, and all kind of stuff, and they get wet, and
Whatever you want to do with that, you want to bring that attention, that's still going on.
Okay.
I don't know what we can do.
All right, the only other thing I've got here is an executive session. And so I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Who made the motion? Was that Danny?
Okay, see ya. It's all good. I don't need a vote anyway. It's just information. I'll catch you up later.
Are you leaving? Is Gary leaving?
Yeah, he's got somewhere. He said he needed to be.
Okay, what?